Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up one of the most, magnificent and enduring literary traditions in human history, the Jataka tales.
Yeah, they really are something special.
If you're looking for a crash course in ethics, art history, and maybe even political philosophy, this is definitely your deep dive.
And these aren't just, ancient Indian folklore or simple bedtime stories. Not at all.
Right.
The Jatakas are a foundational literary vehicle. Think of it like a collection of 547 stories recounting the previous lives of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni.
And they were used to translate pretty abstract philosophical doctrines into memorable parables, right?
Exactly. They're a key part of Buddhist pedagogy. We're looking past the charming fable aspect to see them as teaching tools.
And our focus today is one specific, incredibly powerful narrative, the Mahakapi Jataka. That's the tale of the great monkey king.
Yes. It's arguably one of the most dramatic and influential Jatakas. It really demonstrates the ultimate meaning of selfless leadership.
And also the destructive potential of unchecked desire.
Precisely. Our mission here is to analyze that core narrative, explore its really intense ethical function, and discover how profoundly it shaped ancient Asian sculpture and religious practice.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting at the very beginning. What exactly are the Jatakas? You said birth stories?
Yeah, the name translates simply to birth stories. They chronicle the journey of the Bodhisattva, that's the Buddha to be, as he moved through countless lifetimes, basically perfecting his character.
And they're old, like really old.
Oh, yes. Among the oldest classes of Buddhist literature, we can trace elements back to maybe the 4th century BCE, eventually codified as those 547 distinct stories in the Pali tradition.
And you mentioned a narrative structure. How does that work? It sounds important for the teaching aspect.
It's crucial. So typically, a story begins in the Buddha's present life. Something happens, maybe an argument or a notable event among his monks.
Okay.
And he then uses that incident as a springboard. He narrates a past life story to contextualize what's happening now and show the underlying karmic connection between the people involved.
So it's like the ultimate reveal. I was there, you were there, and here's how this pattern started ages ago.
Exactly like that. It works like this. Maybe two monks are squabbling over something trivial, say, the last bit of food. The Buddha might step in and say, monks, this reminds me. You two were fighting over mangoes 500 years ago as well. Let me tell you the story of the great monkey king.
Wow, okay. That framing device instantly connects present conflicts to these deep, ancient ethical lessons. It makes it very personal.
It does. Now, what's fascinating is the why behind them. These stories aren't history lessons, not really. They are expositions on karma.
The principle that every intentional action has consequences.
Right, cause and effect. And they also introduce the paramitas, the perfections, things like generosity, wisdom, compassion, which the Bodhisattva has to master on his path.
The other really interesting thing you touched on is the form the Bodhisattva takes. King, ascetic.
Yeah.
But often an animal, a monkey, a lion.
Yes, and that's not accidental.
Why do that?
Yeah.
From our usual human-centric view, making your moral hero a monkey seems unusual.
Well, it's actually a brilliant pedagogical strategy. It fundamentally subverts the anthropocentric hierarchy that was dominant, in ancient India and, frankly, most of the world.
How so?
By showing the highest virtues, compassion, sacrifice, wisdom embodied in animal forms, it powerfully suggests that the capacity for profound moral action, even the potential for enlightenment, isn't limited to humans. It's inherent in all sentient beings.
That's a really profound statement. It elevates the moral status of animals and directly supports that core Buddhist principle of ahimsa.
Non-harming, exactly. It also makes complex ethics instantly relatable for the average person, the layperson.
So they took existing folklore.
They essentially Buddhicized popular folklore. They took familiar stories, characters people already knew, and infused them with Buddhist doctrine. This translated dense philosophical concepts into narratives people could easily understand, remember, and cherish.
So the Jatakas were like a crucial bridge between doctrine and daily life.
A very effective one.
Okay, let's now examine how one specific tale, this Mahakapi Jataka number 407, used that whole framework to deliver maybe the most radical lesson in leadership. Set the scene for us.
All right. The setting is described as idyllic. We're on the banks of the Ganges River, high up in the Himalayas, and there's this enormous colossal mango tree.
Not just any mango tree, though.
No, its fruit is legendary, described as having divine sweetness. And living there is the Bodhisattva, reborn this time as the Monkey King. He's the wise leader of a massive troop, 80,000 monkeys.
80,000, that's a kingdom. A huge logistical challenge, surely.
It is. And his leadership immediately shows foresight, the kind a good ruler needs. He anticipates the threat posed by this amazing fruit.
Because it's so desirable.
Exactly. He commands his troop to meticulously pluck every single fruit or flower hanging over the Ganges, specifically to prevent any evidence, even a petal, from floating downstream and being discovered by humans.
He's being a vigilant protector, managing a known risk. Very responsible.
Very. But despite this incredible diligence, there's a flaw. A single critical oversight.
There's always something, isn't there?
It seems so. A single mango hidden by an ant's nest ripens unnoticed. It falls into the river, floats hundreds of miles downriver to the city of Benares.
And inevitably gets found.
Right. It's found and brought to the local human ruler, King Brahmadatta.
King Brahmadatta tastes the fruit. And this is where it all kicks off, isn't it? This overwhelming impulse to possess that sweetness, that's the destructive desire you mentioned.
That's it, exactly. The texts have a specific term for that kind of intense, immediate craving that just overwhelms reason.
What is it?
It's tanha, T-A-N-H-A. Within the Buddhist framework, tanha, which means craving, thirst, grasping, is identified as the very root of suffering. It's the core of the Second Noble Truth.
And King Brahmadatta's tanha for this mango just takes over everything.
Completely. He abandons his duties, musters his army, marches upstream, finds the tree and the monkeys.
And issues a completely disproportionate and frankly cruel order.
Utterly cruel. Consumed by this craving, he doesn't see the monkeys as fellow beings or even just animals living peacefully. He sees them as thieves. Obstacles to his desire.
So he orders his archers
to surround the tree and kill all 80,000 of them at dawn. The peace of this entire community shattered by one man's unchecked greed.
And that's the moment the Monkey King truly steps into his Bodhisattva role. He sees the sheer terror of his followers.
And he makes a vow. Do not fear. I will save your lives.
The scale of what he does next is just mind-boggling.
It's superhuman. The Ganges is described as being 100 bow lengths wide, a huge distance. The Monkey King leaps across it in a single bound.
Incredible.
Secures a sturdy vine, or maybe bamboo, to a tree on the far bank, ties the other end around his own waist, and then leaps back toward the mango tree where his troop is trapped.
But he misjudges the length needed on the way back.
It comes up just short. Maybe the vine wasn't quite long enough, or the calculation was off under pressure. His only option, in that split second, is to grab a branch on the mango tree side with his hands. And stretch his own body.
Exactly. He stretches his body taut across the gap, spanning the entire river. He becomes a living bridge for his 80,000 followers to run across his back to safety on the opposite bank.
That imagery, a living bridge, it's just the ultimate picture of leadership as sacrifice.
It really is. But the story doesn't just leave it as a pure heroic sacrifice. There's another layer.
The karmic connections you mentioned earlier.
Precisely. Because every Jataka has to teach about these complex karmic relationships. Among the 80,000 monkeys crossing his back is one who, in a past life, was Devadatta.
Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin. The one who is always jealous and trying to harm him.
That's the one. In this life, as a monkey, he sees his chance. As he crosses, he deliberately, maliciously leaps hard onto the middle of the great king's back.
Oh, no.
It breaks his spine or his heart in some versions, a mortal wound. So the king suffers not just the immense physical strain for his troop, but also this vicious betrayal from one of his own subordinates. From a purely practical standpoint, though, isn't that suicidal? The leader sacrifices himself, leaving the kingdom vulnerable. How does the story justify that compared to, say, a king needing to survive to protect his people long term?
That's exactly the kind of pragmatic thinking the tale pushes back against. The Bodhisattva ideal isn't motivated by practical worldly survival in that sense. It's driven by bodhicitta.
The compassionate wish for the liberation of all beings.
Right. So the goal isn't worldly success, it's spiritual perfection. His sacrifice demonstrates that a true leader's life is secondary to the well-being and safety of their subjects. In this moment, the quote-unquote animal proves morally superior, more sovereign than the human king who's only focused on his own craving and possession.
And adding Devadatta's betrayal, that adds another dimension. The Monkey King endures not just the physical agony, but also this profound ingratitude and malice. That requires extraordinary patience.
It really does. It demands the perfection of Kante, that's forbearance, patience, endurance. The Bodhisattva has to endure harm from others without anger or retaliation, because his core motivation, Mahakapi, great compassion, is unwavering.
So his sacrifice isn't just impulsive heroism, it's driven purely by the need to stop his followers' suffering.
An active commitment to alleviating that terror. That's the great compassion.
And the act itself, turning his body into the bridge, that's not just giving away possessions.
No, it's the ultimate expression of the dana paramita, the perfection of generosity. It's a bodily gift-giving that completely transcends the basic instinct for self-preservation. That's why this particular Jataka is so deeply revered.
But the story doesn't end with just the monkeys escaping and the king dying betrayed, does it? There's a transformation.
Yes, the ultimate redemption, in a way, comes from the human king Brahmadatta. He witnesses this entire spectacle, the leap, the bridge, the betrayal, the monkeys escaping.
And it affects him profoundly.
He's filled with this sudden deep awe and remorse. He sees the nobility of the Monkey King compared to his own base craving. He immediately countermands his order to kill the monkeys.
Does he try to help the Monkey King?
Yes. He has a mortally wounded Monkey King, gently rescued, carefully lowered down, and tended to with great respect.
And the Monkey King uses his last moments
to teach. Even dying, he fulfills his Bodhisattva role. He delivers a final sermon to King Brahmadatta about righteous kingship. The core message: a ruler's absolute duty is protection, and their subjects' happiness must be dearer than life itself.
Wow. So the physical salvation of the monkeys is matched by the spiritual transformation of the human king.
Exactly. Brahmadatta is changed. He honors the Monkey King with a full royal funeral and shrine, and the story says he ruled justly from then on. It elevates the fable from just a story to powerful political and ethical philosophy.
And this philosophy wasn't just confined to texts. You mentioned it was carved into stone.
Absolutely. These Jataka stories were integral to spreading Buddhist culture. They were carved in relief on major religious monuments, like stupas, especially at places like Bharhut and Sanchi in India. Think of them as sermons in stone for a public that was largely illiterate.
They're visual aids for understanding the Dharma.
Precisely. They're crucial evidence for us today, showing how these narratives were understood and transmitted.
Let's talk specifics then. We have these incredible examples from Bharhut and Sanchi. How did ancient artists manage to translate this complex sequential story onto a single stone panel?
They used clever visual strategies. One common method was continuous or synoptic narrative.
Meaning multiple moments in the story shown in the same picture.
Yes. Take the Bharhut medallion, which dates from around 125 to 100 BCE. It's a round stone carving. In that single frame, you see the whole plot unfold. You see the Monkey King stretched across the river, forming the bridge. Monkeys are crossing his back.
You see the betrayal.
You often see Devadatta's leap depicted. And crucially, you also see the rescue efforts men are shown holding out a blanket or cloth to gently catch the Bodhisattva as he finally falls, wounded.
Wow, all that in one circle. And you mentioned an iconographic detail in the final sermon scene at Bharhut.
Yes, this is really telling. In the depiction of the final conversation between the dying Monkey King and the human king Brahmadatta, Brahmadatta is deliberately shown seated on a slightly lower seat or stool than the Monkey King.
Ah, a visual cue about status.
Exactly. It's a deliberate visual hierarchy. It instantly communicates the human king's newfound humility and his reverence for the animal's moral and spiritual wisdom. The artist visually confirms that in this moment, the Monkey King is the superior teacher, the true sovereign in the moral sense.
That's powerful visual storytelling. Then if we jump forward maybe a century or so to the Sanchi Gateway panel, the approach changes.
It does. Sanchi often uses a more complex, layered narrative. It seems to assume the audience is already familiar with the basic plot of the Jataka.
So it's less about telling the story step by step.
Right. Sanchi focuses more on interpreting the theme, especially the theme of transformation. The technique used for the Mahakapi Jataka there is masterful. It's the dual representation of King Brahmadatta within the same carved panel.
Showing him twice. How does that work?
Okay, picture the panel. In the lower portion, you see the aggressive King Brahmadatta. He's on horseback, easily recognizable, surrounded by his archers, ready to attack the monkeys. That's the before state consumed by top.
Okay.
Then higher up in the same frame, often physically closer to where the dying Bodhisattva figure is depicted, you see Brahmadatta again. But this time, he's seated, perhaps looking humbled, attentive, deep in conversation with the Monkey King. That's the after-state penitent and transformed.
That juxtaposition is brilliant. It collapses time.
It does. By showing the before and after states almost simultaneously, side by side, the artist throws the focus entirely onto the profound and instantaneous change of heart. The spiritual transformation becomes the absolute centerpiece of the artwork.
So Sanchi moves beyond just illustrating the story.
It's providing an interpretation, a commentary on the text's deeper meaning. Bharhut laid out the plot clearly. Sanchi assumes you know it and wants you to reflect on its significance.
This is fascinating. Okay, let's connect this back to the bigger picture. How does this specific Jataka, with its focus on ultimate self-sacrifice, stack up against other ancient fable traditions, especially those focused on power and strategy like Aesop in the West or India's own Panchatantra?
That comparison is really important for highlighting the unique spiritual goal, the telos, you might say, of the Jataka tales.
Okay.
Aesop's fables, for example, generally present a more, shall we say, practical or even cynical view of power dynamics. Leadership is often based on strength or cunning or just surviving.
Right. I'm thinking of the animals and the plague. There's a crisis, and how is it solved?
By scapegoating. The powerful animals, the lion and the fox, cleverly exonerate themselves, and all the blame falls on the weakest one, the poor ass who admitted to nibbling a bit of grass.
So the moral there is pretty bleak.
Yeah, it's basically the weak are made to suffer for the misdeeds of the powerful. Aesop's focus is often on how to navigate or just survive in what's presented as an inherently unjust world. Very pragmatic.
And the Panchatantra, also Indian, but different.
Very different in name. The Panchatantra is explicitly a Niti Shastra, essentially a treatise on political science, statecraft, and worldly wisdom. It's designed to teach princes and ministers practical strategies for success, self-preservation, diplomacy, how to gain advantage, think cleverness, alliances, knowing your enemy.
So both Aesop and the Panchatantra are focused on worldly success, governance, survival through cleverness or strength.
Pretty much, but from that pragmatic perspective, the Monkey King's sacrifice in the Jataka looks, well, foolish. He gives up his life, his kingdom. He doesn't win in a worldly sense.
Which means the Jataka's goal, its transcendent telos, must be something entirely different.
Exactly. It's not worldly survival or political strategy. The goal is spiritual perfection. The Mahakapi Jataka demonstrates a radical redefinition of success. Success is total selfless service, driven by that great compassion, Mahakaro.
So it transcends the immediate political calculation.
Completely. It illustrates the ultimate path towards Buddhahood itself. Success isn't measured by the life the Monkey King kept, but by the spiritual perfection he attained in the very act of giving it away for others.
Wow. This deep dive really hammers home how the Mahakapi Jataka works on so many levels simultaneously. It's history, it's art, it's ethics, it's political philosophy, all rolled into one narrative.
It truly is.
And the Monkey King remains this incredibly powerful, timeless archetype of the ideal leader, one whose strength isn't measured by dominance, but by the willingness to sacrifice absolutely everything for the well-being and security of others.
And perhaps here's a final thought for you, our listener, to carry forward from this. Think about it. The entire violent conflict in this story, this near massacre, hinges on one single man's unchecked craving, that Tanya, for one sweet mango.
Such a small thing, really.
Seemingly small. That personal desire spirals, bringing an entire army to the brink of violence, and it's only stopped by one being's total act of self-giving. So the question to maybe ponder is such a small, seemingly insignificant desire for just a piece of fruit can set a powerful king on a path of conflict and destruction? What small, unchecked desires in our own lives might, perhaps subtly, be setting us on paths of conflict, distraction, or causing harm, maybe without us even fully realizing it?